for today's face-off on Fox Soul. Challengers Quan LX and Big Angry Adams. Ready to go blow by blow on those hot topics. Face-off on Fox Soul starts right now. Up first, Lil Baby accused of starring in a viral gay sex tape. Here's Quan LX.
Charles, there was a viral video going around that has now been declared by the gentleman who was alleged to be in the video, one of our most iconic hip-hop rappers, Lil Baby. He has made it crystal clear it's not him in that video. And for those who want to portray him as someone who will be doing the things that that man was doing to another man in that video, he's totally against that. That's not who he is. And even I was concerned at the very beginning, because social media can lie to you all day, every day. And when I saw that, I said to myself, this cannot be our brother, Lil Baby. I even asked my son, is this Lil Baby? And my 17-year-old son told me to say, no, Dad, that's not him. Because I was extremely concerned, because you cannot be a gangster rapper giving another man fellatio. I'm going to say it correctly, a blowjob. You can't be a gangster rapper going platinum doing that. That's not what time it is. Our gangster rappers have always been legendary, strong, hard men, tough men. Not these men around here doing, no, I'm not with that at all.
Okay, Quanell, firstly, you know, people in the Houston area are aware that I have a unique vantage into the hip hop and rap world, having served as a lawyer from some very noteworthy members of our Texas hip hop community. And part of that vantage is seeing that there are those that are real rappers and have lived the life and come through it to become artists, and there are those engaging in a masquerade, right? So when you speak holistically about the gangster rappers, right? I mean, let's recall that Dr. Dre was what? He was a breakdancer before he got recruited to join NWA. We have a legendary kingmaker here in Houston who has selected people to make them artists. You know, there are people of all types that have then assumed the mantle of gangster rapper to sell albums, and there are many of them that are real. I don't disagree with that. I would consider two of my dearest friends, Bun B and Zero, they are most certainly authentic and real, both in what they do and how they live their lives. But I don't see how being a homosexual prevents someone from being violent, right? Or prevents someone from being real. But let's talk even worse. How about this reality now, Quanell? That someone could just put an emoji over your face, obscure it, make an allegation, right? And then the whole world, including two middle-aged men on a TV show, are having this conversation whether or not Lil Baby is gay or not. I think that's the real issue, is how, you know, in this age of deep fakes, and this wasn't a very deep fake, that everyone is talking, oh, this wasn't AI, this was just somebody.
But with the involvement of it.
But we're all discussing it. What we should be discussing is, one, how calling someone gay shouldn't be an insult. You make it an insult, but that's because you're a homophobe.
I didn't say that.
And two, almost certainly you did.
Bless your heart.
And number two, why does anyone care? Right? Why does anyone care? And I mean,
care.
very clearly, Lil Baby, he has a child. He has a beautiful girlfriend. He's been incredibly successful. You know, but who cares?
I care.
Why?
Let me say this to you. If you run around talking about put gats to dude's head, if you run around talking about doing a drive-by on everybody in the hood every 5 minutes, if you talking about what it's like to go to jail in due time and you gangster this and gangster that, and then you touching your toes for another man, I'm sorry. That ain't gangster to me. If you run around talking about how tough you is and you gonna kill everybody on the block, and all of a sudden you run around with a miniskirt on and a wig on after hours, nah, that ain't gangster to me, baby. I'm sorry. That ain't Little Baby. That's Shanae, baby. That's who, baby. Okay. That's what's going on, baby. So I'm down with the brothers living their lyrics. Don't play gangster tough guy with your lyrics and then turn around and you doing the old time rule.
What is your feeling? Because obviously, as a criminal defense attorney,
and Bun B, you brought up Bun B?
Yeah.
He loves women.
Well, of course he does. He's married to a beautiful woman.
Zero?
Right.
Loves women.
Yeah, he has more kids than I can count as his lawyer.
So then why in the hell you bring them two up when you just get this gay stuff?
Because I'm saying they're authentic, and there are a number of rappers
that aren't authentic,
that are absolutely wearing a facade of gangsterism. Whereas you're talking about all rappers that are gangster rappers, well, they're this. Well, they're not. There are many of them that are just wearing a mask. But more
you have some studio gangsters, yes.
Well, it's nice that you admit that I'm right. But more importantly, Quanell, you talk about all this drive-by and this and that and the other, and you don't take issue with that. right?
I do.
You take issue.
You're wrong. I do.
You didn't just now. And you
in
take
the context
issue
of this debate,
with
I'm
him,
using it as an
with
analogy.
Him possibly being a homosexual. But hey, I've represented a bunch of hardcore gangsters, not rappers, but gangsters, criminals.
Were they gay?
Well, here's the thing.
Were they gay?
What do you think about gay for the state,
Were they
Quanell?
gay?
What do you think about gay for the state, Quanell?
Look,
that is my question.
I'm not gay.
What do you think about gay for the state?
I'm not gay for the state.
All the men that are locked down for decades.
Let me say this.
Brutal, hard men.
Let me speak to that.
That are having gay sex in prison.
Let me say this.
You calling them? They're not gangster?
I'm not gay to the state. I'm not gay for the day.
But we're not talking about you.
And those brothers in prison, let me tell you something, brothers on lockdown. Don't be chasing booty in prison, then come home and infect our sisters when you come home acting like you a man. Okay. If you in jail, you did the crime, do the time. But don't chase booty behind bars and act like you love women in the public and in the private.
Those that are gay for the state, you don't think they're gangster? That was my question.
If you playing tough guy out here, having sex with women out here and behind bars, you got a whole man rocking you through the bars, I'm not with that. I got a problem with that.
So actual tough guys that are also homosexuals, you think that that's somehow not possible?
I think they fake as hell.
Why?
Because any tough guy that's homosexual ain't really a tough guy.
Why not?
He's pretending to be that way to mask who he really is.
But how does
because because he don't really want to be Rambo. He want to be G.I. Jane. So he's masking who he is.
I don't know if you know how it works, but there's typically a top and a bottom.
Oh, shit, I don't know all that. I'm sorry, pardon my French. No, I don't know all that.
There's typically a bear
you went
and
too far
a twink.
Now.
There's all types of gay people, just like there's all types of straight people, right? And at the end of the day,
so that's why you defend gay people so much.
Okay, why do you
know all the analogies. You know all the positions, who's on top, who's on bottom. You know all the acronyms and who likes to be where. So somebody's the pitcher and somebody's the bat catcher.
Okay. Hey, what I'm not
I knew something was wrong with you.
That's the thing.
I knew you've been sitting up here faking and pretending like you against me, and now you don't want to come out. I demand you come out that closet.
It's an insult.
I'm opening that door for you. Come on out that closet. I'm going to pull the blinds back.
You represent the whole problem. Your hatred of gay people.
I don't hate gay people.
Absolutely. Just like you said earlier this week, Farrakhan's not an anti-Semite. You say horrible things. You say, oh, no, but I'm not homophobic, right?
I got gay members of my family.
White people are enemies.
I love them dearly.
I'm not racist.
I love the gay members of my family.
So they're not
but I'm not with it. I'm not with it.
You got any gay men in your family?
Yes. And I love them,
they're
but
not
I'm
capable
not with it.
of being tough?
No, I really don't think so.
That is just absurd.
No,
you're absurd.
You think you tough. That's what it is.
Release the hate.
You think you tough.
Release
Mr. On
the
bottom,
hate.
Mr. On top.
Up next, former President Obama issues a new statement about the Israel-Hamas war. In round two, President Obama issued a statement supporting Israel and needing to abide by international law. Here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
Quanell, we saw Harvard University march in condemnation of Harvard Law School alumni, or alumnus, Barack Obama, who was referred to as Barry there. He was at Harvard Law School about a decade before me and was famously the first African-American editor-in-chief of the Law Review and known for being an incredibly passionate but incredibly kind man, right? But Harvard students of all races were marching and calling him genocidal and saying Barry should be convicted of genocide, and they marched right up to the business school and said horrible things about our former president. Why? Because he released a statement, and much like his tone typically, was very measured, right? He pointed out the reality that Hamas needs to be eliminated because they're monsters, right? And that Israel has a right to protect itself. But he also said that he should, well, let me read his words because I'm no Barack Obama. He said the Israeli government's decision to cut off food, water, and electricity to a captive civilian population threatens not only to worsen a growing humanitarian crisis, it could further harden Palestinian attitudes for generations, erode global support for Israel, play into the hands of Israel's enemies, and undermine long-term effects to achieve peace and stability in the region, which of course had a lot of people on a lot of Zionists critical, right? And then of course, because he stood up for Israel's right to defend itself. He's got a lot of these Islamist extremists and liberals critical. So everyone's condemning him. And I typically think that a politician has gotten something perfectly right when he's getting condemned from the extremes of both sides. I applaud Barack Obama for sticking up for Israel's right to defend himself, but also recognizing the humanity of the Palestinians, which a lot of people aren't aware, Gaza's almost 50% child. It has one of the largest child populations in the country, and he also recognizes the need to act with restraint, at least towards the population, as opposed to the extremists.
President Obama, I believe, did not go far enough in his critique of both sides. President Obama is a very intelligent man, highly intelligent brother, and he was very measured, I agree with you, in his critique of both Hamas and the Israeli government. The problem the Israeli government has is exactly what he's saying. If this war that you claim is to eradicate Hamas, but is seen as though you're eradicating the Palestinian people, this will absolutely backfire on them. You and I had this same discussion weeks ago when this war first started, and I said to you that if it looks like that they're killing and going after the Palestinian people in the name of going after Hamas, that could backfire and cause others in the region to get engaged, like Hezbollah, into that war. Barack Obama should have went further and spoke about what the United Nations has said for years. The Israeli government is guilty of human rights violations, and they should be held accountable for that. Just today, the Israeli government suspended access to several United Nations officials to Israel because they criticized Israel in the bombing in Palestine. So what Israel appears the image to look like is though if you criticize the Israeli government, you're on the enemies list. It can't be that way. Hamas did not have a right to go into another country, kidnap women and children and say Allahu Akbar. That's hypocrisy. You cannot kill innocent human beings that are non-combatants that's attending a quote-unquote concert, and then you say Allahu Akbar, because the Quran teaches if you kill one innocent human being, it is as though you kill the whole of humanity. Prophet Muhammad gave specific rules of how hostages were to be dealt with and prisoners of war were to be dealt with in times of war. He never permitted the taking of women or children. To do what they did contradicts and goes against the very sunnah and hadith of Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah. So they're wrong for that. But Israel is also just as wrong, Charles. When you watch the bombing over there, 50% of the population, I agree with you, like you said, is children, teenagers, babies. So who you bombing? You're bombing babies and kids. And then you deny water, you deny fuel, you deny electricity. What about the hospitals that are caring for people who have nothing to do with Hamas? They don't even agree with Hamas, but their families are being slaughtered because you're allegedly going after them. Would we tolerate that in America?
Well, let's a few points, right? First of all, Israel cut off access to members of the United Nations because the Secretary General of the United Nations just yesterday called for the contextualization of Hamas's butchering of women, children, and families, right? And the world should be pissed off. He should be forced to resign. You talk about the blockade. I was always against the blockade, but no one talks about why the original blockade was in place. A wash of terror in response to Israel trying to normalize relations and Israel offering the two-state solution for what, the sixth time. The reality is that we've never had two areas at war, and one of those having a responsibility to provide humanitarian aid to the other. So I get the strategic argument that Israel's making, but it's not a human argument, right? And at some point, you need to take the moral high ground. The truth is that many residents of Palestine, their only vantage has been oppression by the Israeli state. But there are also many members of residents of Palestine who have openly advocated. You had the guy that called and bragged to his parents he had just killed 10 Jews in their homes, and their parents celebrating it. You've had video after video of horrible stuff that seems that the problem goes much deeper than just Hamas. And let's not forget, Hamas is the government of Gaza. It's not some splinter group. It's not some just terrorist organization. They are a terrorist organization. But what Barack Obama did is something that most leaders should be doing, right? He should be recognizing the right to Israel to defend itself. He should be recognizing the right to use violence in response to violence. but he should also caution Israel not to abandon their humanity just because so many radical Islamists, I'm not talking about all Muslims, believe that they should all be killed and don't have a right to exist, which is why you only have 19,000 Jews in the rest of the Middle East.
People also who believe the same thing, that the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim.
That's absolutely
There's also there's
there
videos
are a
out there.
handful of radical
There's
monster
videos
Jews.
out there.
There are far
where
more
those
Islamists
Jews who believe like that are attacking Christians and attacking Muslims.
But the truth is, radicalism
there's
is
evil
found
on both sides.
Up next, a Georgia officer caught on tape shooting and killing a black man. The controversy behind it all. In the main event, a Georgia deputy shot and killed a black man at point-blank range. And now the dash and body camera video's creating a lot of question and controversy. Here's Quanell X.
Charles, we watched a recent video that was released here this week of a Georgia sheriff killing an African-American gentleman who had recently been released after serving 16 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. He was exonerated for that crime. Well, he gets pulled over, allegedly doing 100 miles per hour, over 100 miles an hour, by a Georgia deputy. And when he's pulled over, this deputy gets into a verbal confrontation with him and then decides to pull out his taser and shoots the man with a taser. When this gentleman is outside at the back of his vehicle, he puts both of his palms on the back of the truck like this, where the lights are. He's talking to the deputy. Over and over, they're going back and forth. He's requesting the explanation of why you pulled me over, why you pulled me over. Instead of him de-escalating the situation, explaining to the young African-American gentleman, or the black guy, because he was that young, but explaining to him, sir, this is why I pulled you over. This is what's going on. Me pulling you over don't mean that you're guilty, that you're going to jail. But I'm only doing my job because this is your violation that you committed. Why did he call a sergeant? Why did he call for backup and just say, wait, we're going to wait for a sergeant to get here. And when the sergeant get here, we both can explain it to you so you can calm down. I'm calling him so you can feel safe and I can feel safe too. He didn't do that, Charles. He pulls out his taser because he refused to put his hand behind his back and just shoots him with the taser. The brother gets angry and tries to pull the taser out. Then a tussle ensures. The brother grabs and gets hold of his neck. He's choking him. It appears like he got his hands around his neck. He's choking him. Cop shoots one shot and kill him. I got a problem with that because where was the de-escalation here by the officer? Where was him? Why just order the man's request and say, look, tell me why you pulled me over. Explain that to me and let me call for backup of a sergeant to be here. What had he done at that point when he's just saying, explain to me why you pulled me over? Why put him in handcuffs? He hadn't done anything up until that point that justified him being put in handcuffs.
I am not shocked at all about your mischaracterization of the events. I do think it's horrifying. I think it's horrifying that someone died. But the truth is that Leonard Cure, he spent 16 years in prison for a crime that he possibly did not commit, but he was dragged down and identified by one of the two victims because of his history of engaging in armed and aggravated robbery prior to that. I hate to think that anyone, it sounds like there was some police malfeasance, and I hate to think that anyone would spend years. He was also tremendously compensated for it, thanks to the Innocent Project's diligent work. But at the end of the day, that has nothing to do with this Georgia sheriff's deputy, who he passed, who was driving on the road, and he passed going in excess of 100 miles an hour. And when you're traveling at 100 miles an hour and you get pulled over by a police officer you just drove by, you don't need to be explained. Although the officer did explain that to him, you don't need to have that explained to you. You knew what you were doing. The officer told him that he was going to jail. Everything was fine. He did have his hands on his things, but once he was told he was going to jail, he began to physically, violently resist. The officer used two less than lethal techniques to try to compel it, right? At this point, what you're suggesting is that the officer flee back and allow him to take off or something that would put more lives in danger. But he wrestled with him, he tussled with him. He tried all of the available. Now, my criticism from a law enforcement perspective is it bothers me greatly that more police officers don't carry and utilize pepper spray, right? Because pepper spray would have been a less than lethal option that would have ended that encounter. You get sprayed with pepper, typically pepper foam, you're not functioning, you're not fighting, you're on the ground, and it's over. And I wish our law enforcement community would use it far, far more. But when he's not just choking him, he was choking him and had bent him all the way back, was clearly trying to kill him. He left that officer without any other choice. Another criticism that I have is, and we saw this happen also to a New Orleans football player in Louisiana, and you know, that he was arrested for reckless driving. Now that arrest went without incident, but at the end of the day, what we need to look at is, are black men being arrested for reckless driving or driving crazy, because they're both driving crazy, right, more often than white men, right? If that deputy would have merely written him a ticket if Leonard was, you know, but something you mentioned in the commercial break, which I found fascinating, we were looking at the Associated Press's article, and you made the point that the first paragraph reads, and this is by Russ Bynum, the sub-headline, let's start with the sub-headline. A Georgia deputy fatally shot a black man at point-blank range during a traffic stop after the man, who had been wrongfully imprisoned years ago, grabbed the officer by the neck and forcing his head backwards. Relatives of the man believe the shooting was unnecessary. And then you get to the first full paragraph. A Georgia deputy fatally shot a black man at point-blank range. And you pointed out that they don't mention Mr. Cure's name until the second paragraph. And you wondered why. I would posit
in fact, it's the third paragraph.
Well, actually, that's the subheadline. But I would posit that it's because many in the media want everything to be divisive and about race as opposed to being about the facts. And the facts were here that you had a man attack a police officer and get shot after committing a crime.
I think the cop attacked him first.
Actually,
when he shot him with the taser.
He was resisting.
No, he was not resisting at
yes,
that point.
No, he was not. You need to watch it again.
His hands was on the cab. Wait a minute. His hands was on the cab, and then he's telling him, they're going back and forth, they're arguing, and then you see him tase him. He's trying to pull a taser away, then he pulls out the little nightstick and shakes it out, and starts hitting him with the nightstick. The non-lethal force, two non-lethal forces, okay? Pepper spray, I agree with you, could have helped. But in this case, why did he just de-escalate the situation?
Well, what would you have done?
Because see, remember, what he could have did.
If you as an officer tell someone, I'm going to arrest you,
I'll tell you what I've done.
And then they're not letting you arrest them.
Because I'm out there by myself in the dark. I would have positioned myself between the driver's seat and where he was standing so he can't take advantage and leave and run off and evade arrest. I'd have called for backup on the sergeant. I'd have held him there at gunpoint or at taser point until backup got there and just say, we both gonna wait until somebody gets here, like a sergeant that can explain to you what's going on. I don't want to kill you. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want you to hurt me, but backup is on the way. De-escalation.
If he would have backed up and took his gun out, if Mr. Cure would have charged him, would he have been okay shooting him?
But he didn't do that. That never happened.
But because he was getting choked, he didn't have a chance.
So you're assuming he would have did that?
No, I'm not assuming anything.
There was no reason to use the taser.
What you're assuming, state troopers typically work miles and miles away from other state troopers, right? They're out there by themselves. But they have access to county officials by radio. They're out there by themselves. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But this is your inexperience from the perspective of law enforcement about how you respond. I wish you didn't shoot him. I wish you pepper sprayed him.
The taser
but when you go to arrest someone and they fight you, and they get to the point where they're choking you and trying to snap your back in half, then the person doing that has brought the force upon himself.
He escalated, not de-escalated.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say I find the Leonard Cure shooting to be horrifying, and I do think we need to continue to do very necessary work in America to determine if decisions to arrest are being driven by complexion or perceptions of race as opposed to the crime committed. And obviously, anyone that spends 16 years in prison for a crime they did not commit, and that looks like what happened to Mr. Cure, they're going to have some significant post-traumatic stress, and I just think it's a horrible outcome for his family, and it's heartbreaking, but I do think that the officer acted in a legal justified manner. I still think we should mandate that all officers carry pepper spray. I think everyone, when people talk to me about self-defense, you know, gun, you're making an ultimate decision. You can't take that bullet back. Pepper spray is a very different story. I recommend to everyone, especially women, to carry pepper spray in their pocket or on their keychain as crime continues to spiral out of control. We'll talk about Lil Baby. You can be tough, you can be violent, you can be a bad person, and you can be gay. But it doesn't seem like Lil Baby is at all, right? It seems like Lil Baby is just the most recent person to have someone demonize him on social media, and it goes like fire, right? And it's horrible. And Barack Obama, thank you for your comments. You're a great man.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say something that's not popular, even in my own community. But I want to say this because it has to be said. Dear brothers across the country, if you're watching this show, I implore you, I'm pleading with you. To some degree, I'm begging you. When you encounter a law enforcement officer, even if you believe the cop is wrong, he's not justified, what he's doing is violating your rights, please just comply. Just please comply. File your complaint afterwards. Reach out to activists, civil rights organizations, and lawyers afterwards and file those complaints. Don't try the situation out there at the scene. Live to fight another day. I assure you, don't give some of these trigger-happy cops, some of these racist-minded cops, an opportunity to kill you and call it justifiable homicide because you resisted it and did not comply. Stop the resistance unless your life is absolutely in danger. Just comply. Rob them of the desire to want to harm you by complying and file your complaint later.
That was a beautiful comment, Cornell.